So this class is on the principle of dynamic alignment. Now, in a lot of somatic work and a lot of kind of physiotherapy work, and maybe in some dance styles, the concept of posture and alignment is often presented as something a little bit static. You may have seen images of like blocks of the body stacked on top of one another, and you have these moments of stillness where you're sort of considering yourself as a still form in an alignment, which is really nice, except we live in movement, so it's more useful to think through the process of how all the parts of our body are continually reconfiguring our experience of our whole body. And so this thing that we call alignment is an ongoing process. You change one little part and it affects something in the whole, rather than thinking of overly stabilizing or trying to find stillness within this idea of alignment, that we can think of it in motion and as a result of motion. I say this because even with people that we know and recognize, you might know them from their posture, sure. When you're in a crowd, you might recognize the back of someone that you understand from their stillness, but you also understand them from the tempo of them walking near you or walking up the stairs, and you hear them. So their dynamic alignment also has this very unique configuration of someone that you might recognize. And I think it's nice to think of it in both these ways, as something that you can understand as a static form, but also as a kinetic idea. I took a class this morning and it was with a voice specialist, and she did do this exactly, like still shape form, finding the weight on the feet, dropping the tailbone, slightly bringing your chin back. And it was something that you could then, check in with to see what had changed if you do something else. So like obviously static postural work has a huge proprioceptive use for bringing your memory into your muscle memory. But that way of working can sometimes feel like you're continually fixing yourself. And you're slightly kind of responding to pieces of information that's like move your chin in, okay. Sometimes it can feel a bit like you're imposing things on your body rather than inviting something in. And I know she wasn't facilitating it in a bossy way, so it's not even like she was bossy with it. But I just know from my own experience of postural work, when I would be told, there's something about your head. I'm like, could you tell me more about that? What do you mean, something about my head? So I thought today we'd work through some ideas of still postures and changing those, and then also play around with three of the kind of major, there's many different ways of thinking of the kind of rhythms and the relationships between the bones, but three that we'll play with today are the craniosacral rhythm, so the skull-sacrum relationship through the spine. And we'll also look at the iliofemoral rhythm. So this is the head of the thigh bone into the pelvis, the ilium. And the glenohumeral rhythm, so the upper arm bone into the glenoid cavity of the scapula. Now these are beautiful anatomical terms, and I will send you pictures later. I'd like that we do some moving, explore it through the body, and then I'll send you some beautiful images later from this book, from The Anatomy of Movement by Blandine Calais-Germain. Excellent musculoskeletal movement book. It's fantastic. However, we can get a little bit too much into the diagrams, which are static, and the purpose of today is a movement class. So I hope you forgive me from not showing a load of pictures of bones, because we can do that another time. All right, what else? I think this dynamic alignment concept is really useful to be thought through the idea of the whole and the parts, the part-whole relationship that gets talked about in a Laban movement analysis kind of context, but maybe is not always so referenced in other fields. So if you hear me banging on about wholes and parts, that's kind of where it's come from. All right. So today, let's practice an awareness of this ongoing relationship of our parts as we move through the world and how that affects our whole. We're going to play with that. Without much else to do, roll yourself away from the computer. That's enough of the word part. And take 2 minutes for getting into your body however you would like to do that. And when I say getting into your body, you're already there in your body. but what movement would you like to do that would help you connect? For you, a sense of connection might be connection to breath. It might be a connection to your skin, to the edges of your body and how they make contact with the floor. It might be a sense of finding the weight of your body with a little pulsation or press or rock. You might be finding a sense of stillness, going into passive weight so your body can be received by the ground. So whatever your moving, connecting choice is, it is exactly perfect, depending on the needs and interests of this moment, this week, this time of the day. And I shall recall this concept or term that we played with a few weeks ago called shape flow. So that every time you make an adjustment, it's about seeking greater comfort maybe in your body. One little part starts to speak to your awareness and you can just adjust to make it comfortable. If you're moving a lot, maybe that use of that concept isn't so useful because you're already adjusting all the time. But if you've taken a more still position, remembering that you can invite some little change, some little shift at any time. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, sense into your spine, maybe visualizing skull meeting the top of the cervical vertebrae. And this curve of the neck, these 5 cervical vertebrae. And then they start to curve the other way to find the thoracic spine, these 12 vertebrae curving to the back of your body. And we have this change of the direction in this curve in the other way to the lumbar vertebrae. I should know the number of them, but I've forgotten. Sensing into the curve of the lumbar vertebrae meeting the sacrum. And then we have the tailbone right at the end there. And in your own way, mobilizing spine. Can you initiate right at the level of the vertebrae, or skull, or tail? To find maybe a jiggling motion. Whatever you're doing to explore this, add a bit more breath support. And so coming into this spinal core of the body through mobilizing, you may notice where there are some areas that don't seem to participate so much. You can spend more time there, breathing into it. Maybe giving some touch with your hands. Carry on this exploration of spine, but change your base of support. That might mean rolling to one side, or rolling to your front surface, or rolling to your back surface, or even coming up to sit. What possibility of spinal movement, of a connection maybe between head and tail, can you find in a different orientation? So it's a little like becoming an earthworm, arms and legs, fairly passive in this exploration and more about mobilizing, jiggling, activating through the whole of the spine, into the sacrum and into the skull. And then go ahead and find another base of support. It might be on all fours, it might be on your front surface, it might be sitting. Sense of mobilizing a connection between the ends of the spine and seeing what it can do, where it wants to go, how it wants to be today. So this gentle movement, waking up the cerebrospinal fluid, fluid between skull, sacrum, spine. Go ahead and change base of support one more time. And see what spine, head, and sacrum want to do, can do in this orientation to gravity and base of support. What is the earthworm like here? And keep checking in with a sense of comfort through your body, a sense of breath support. And then please find yourself in this supine hook position, soles of the feet on the ground, knees bent, feet in parallel. If it's really uncomfortable to be in parallel, you can turn your feet slightly out of it, take them a bit wider even, it's okay. And take the arms somewhere comfortable, and let's have the palms down for a little bit more sense of ground. Go ahead and find circles of the back of the sacrum on the ground. As if you were lying on sand and you were imprinting the back of the pelvis onto the ground on the right side, and then more of the lower back would disappear as you press the sacrum in. And then finding the left side and towards the tailbone. And make this small and smooth, even a little bit sleepy. And if you feel like you're gripping in the fronts of the hips, make it even smaller. And then go ahead and find the other direction of this. So maybe the left side of sacrum towards lumbar spine, and then the right side, and then tailbone. And it's fine if you already start to notice spine and skull joining in. They're not doing anything particular, they're just going along for the ride. Not a huge amount of pressure underneath the feet to make this happen. Really trying to initiate at the level of pelvis. And then finding pelvis resting in the middle. Those were some simple circles. I leave it to you now to make some other small movements through pelvis. It might be taking one side towards the right foot, the left foot, mobilizing a little bit in this kind of pre-stage of a vertical plane. Or maybe a simple tucking and arching. But again, don't feel like you need to go to your extreme. Keep it small. You might even find one side of the pelvis dropping further to the floor and one side coming forward, and the other side. And more of a pouring of the weight side to side through pelvis. Great, and then come back to those circles. And notice what your skull is doing. Maybe it's not moving at all. But maybe there's the barest hint of a movement there. That the skull knows that the pelvis is moving. And you don't have to make it happen. Great. And then just rest pelvis in the middle. And maybe the back of your sacrum is feeling quite heavy. And our mind is really increased in sensation and it's needing a little recuperation. So maybe roll to one side. Take the weight out of the back of the pelvis and feel a new base of support. And let's start here, mobilizing through the skull. How is it to roll a little bit more towards the floor with the skull? Rolling the skull a little bit back. So the range of motion here doesn't again need to be huge. It's more simply acknowledging that the skull can differentiate. From right at the top of the spine. And then if more of your skull gets involved, then more of the neck gets involved, and maybe you feel more muscular action through the shoulder a little. Where can the head go? Then you could find a little nod. So often when we're mobilizing through skull, we start on the back surface, but here we have the opportunity to feel the side more of the skull. And then let's roll skull and shoulders and spine and sacrum so that you're back in the supine hook position. And let's find skull carrying on rolling to one side and the other side. And there are so many different ways that we could initiate this. It could be through the hearing. It could be through sight, through the movement of eyeballs to turn the skull. It could be through sensing the contact leaving and parting with the floor underneath you. So even a shift of the awareness of this movement might shift your experience of it and of the rest of your body's experience. And then let's go into some small circles, staying with the sensation of back of skull on the ground. So again, very small, very smooth, very even, and changing direction when you're ready. And then relaxing through the jaw, relaxing through the tongue, take a yawn. So you stretch a bit the muscles here, and then as you relax the jaw, maybe the weight of the jaw can rest a little bit. And then let's refine pelvis. Refinding circles through sacrum. And seeing if the skull can join in a little more this time. Again, no need to force it if it feels like it becomes a contrivance, more muscular, or kind of muscling your way through it. So there is some skull moving as a result of pelvis, and then, okay, maybe I can also give a bit of spatial intent to the journey of skull here. And even that little shift affects something of my sensation. And then I can find a moment of stillness in the middle, and then do the second side. Or the second direction. So finding circle at the back of sacrum on the ground. Noticing what happens to my skull. Subtle changes of pressure, maybe through the different parts of my skull. And then I might start to amplify that with a little bit more choice of my direction of skull moving. Great. And then finding legs long, let's take a gentle heel rock. I say gentle because we've been moving so small and subtle that a heel rock might feel hugely dramatic now. So take this at the size and tempo that makes sense for your journey back into larger movement. It might make sense to be very small for a little while. To take a very soft flex and extend through the ankle joint. Feel the rhythm between sacrum and skull with greater subtlety. Or if you increase that heel rock in tempo and size, maybe you feel a rhythmicity between skull and sacrum with a slightly larger range of motion. And you're welcome to bend through knees a bit through heel rock. Go ahead and explore externally rotating through the legs and see how this feels. And slowly bringing your legs back to parallel with the heel rock. Carry on an internal rotation through the legs, through the thighs. And see what that gives. And you can do that a few times in your own way, externally rotating through thighs. And so we're affecting a little bit how the force is traveling from heels through the bones of the legs into the sacrum, or into the hip sockets, into the pelvic girdle, into the spine, through into the skull. And then take a pause. Recuperate however you would like to recuperate. We've not been really dealing with the hands or the feet much, so you might bring those back into your awareness by giving them some sensation. Coming into an awareness of the whole of your body. Okay, let's go back into the supine hook position and take a release of the right thigh. Allow the sacrum to follow and the left knee to go and the head to turn. And then knee or thigh, left thigh comes back, sacrum comes back with the skull, and then the right thigh. So left knee goes, sacrum goes, and the head can turn, maybe as a result of the pelvis falling slightly to the side. And then to come back, you can maybe start at the level of sole of foot, and then spine, and the other side. Feeling this lower to upper sequencing, or lower into spine rather. I don't think the arms are particularly involved at the moment. And you can choose a tempo that makes sense for now. I've gone quite quickly to feel a little bit more this momentum of the rhythm. But you could take it slower. Okay. Let's go into some thigh lifts and pre-thigh lifts. So I'm extending through my heel and then flexing the knee, floating the knee, returning the leg. And as you do this, visualize the heel bone moving towards and away from the sitting bone. If you need some reminder of sitting bone, you can palpate the bone with your fingertips. Extending. And you may even sense a little bit of the head-tail connection, this craniosacral rhythm underneath this iliofemoral rhythm that we're starting to wake up, of the relationship of the thigh into the pelvis. And the pelvis joining in with the movement of the thigh. It's not staying entirely parallel to the ceiling as you flex the thigh. You may find it curling under a sacrum. This is very different to a kind of Pilates class of stabilizing through pelvis. We're allowing the sacrum to rock a little here. I invite you to start to play with these very simple fundamentals of flexion and extension through the hip and the knee in your own way. So you might externally rotate the leg, internally rotate, extend to the side, adduct the leg, even cross the midline. You might keep your heel on the floor in what's referred to a closed kinetic chain, where you're finding the muscles activating in connection with the ground. Or you might find it as an open chain. So this idea of kinetic chains being muscle groups working together. And here we're playing with all the muscles through the legs into pelvis in a synergistic relationship. And now with a little bit more freedom of choice in your organization of that by how simple or complex you'd like this to be. Extending, drawing, sending out. Playing with legs adducting, coming together, abducting, going away. Internally rotating, externally rotating. Flexing, extending. And again, you can play that with that on one side even to find flexion of the thigh in the front and behind you. And it might be useful to keep imagining these bony landmarks of the heel or the heels and their relationship to the pelvis and to the sitting bones, or even to the sacrum. But taking whatever movement you would like to visualize that connection, activate it, mobilize it. And let's add in occasionally a moment of stillness, a moment of pause. And notice your so-called alignment. Where are the parts? How are they? Where are they? What are they doing? Where is taking more weight? And then change something. Carry on mobilizing, exploring your heel-sits bone connection and this relationship of the head of the thigh into the pelvis. Exploring, sensing, playing, and occasionally a moment of stillness. Taking in the whole. Where is in contact with the ground. Where, if you were to hold this for a long time, would feel uncomfortable. And then make a move from there to come out of that shape to carry on an exploration of the lower body. The relationship of heels to sitting bones. Or even of soles of feet to pelvic floor. And these moments of stillness are there to check in with what do we understand by alignment? How are the bones stacked? How do you sense the whole of your body? And so the moving part is really paying attention to legs and pelvis. And then the pause is to re-include all of you. And then to go back to what did the lower body do? Mobilize, shift. And you can find a simultaneity through the lower, or you can find one leg doing one thing and another leg doing another thing. Super. Okay. Let's find ourselves on all fours. Now, if being on all fours is tiresome for your wrists, you're very welcome to have your forearms on the ground, or you can find your knuckles and be on this kind of shape. So, taking a moment just to take a lateral pelvic shift here, feeling head of thigh bone deeply nestled into each hip socket. And you could take circles with that if you liked. But we'll shift the focus up through the spine to what's going on in the shoulders and the hands. So this circling, let's make it more now pushing from the hands. And you can take that now into any configuration, pushing from right to left. And your elbows will bend here, no need to keep them entirely locked. You might push more of the pads of the fingers into the ground, or heels of the hands might drag you forward. You might really push away from the ground or soften the elbows. And you can find also a relationship coming up into the shoulder girdle. How is it to really drop the collarbones and the breastbone forward? So the shoulder blades slide together on the back, some kind of adduction towards the midline. And then to widen the shoulder blades, abducting these bones, gliding them on the rib cage. How is it to have one shoulder up and the other scapula down? And as you do this, you're calling the shoulder girdle and the bones at the front. We have the collarbones that can also be part of these explorations through the shoulders. So you might take a deep internal rotation of one shoulder. If you bend the elbow, how is it to take your shoulders towards your ears or away from your ears? And maybe the hands are starting to fatigue a little bit, so let's come down to forearms. And here, mobilizing through spine, into shoulders, into skull, refinding that craniosacral rhythm. And the relationship of spine, and how this travels into shoulder girdle, into hands. And you can find even the palms opening on the ground, rolling the bones of the lower arms outwards, hinging on the line of the little finger. So this action of rolling the bones. Then let's come to sitting on the heels. And so finding a relationship now of your hand to your shoulder blade without the connection of the floor. So we just had a lot of feedback from using the floor from what a closed kinetic chain up into the shoulder blade. And now go ahead and sense it in the air. And you might just do one arm first, or you might want to bring both in to play with. And it might be useful to even rub the palms together and sense that shoulder blade in your own body. And so we have, these anatomical principles of adduction, abduction, flexion, extension, rotation. It's nice to have a list, but I'd like that you continue to explore this in your own way. What is this relationship you can find between palms and shoulder blades? And it's not that spine is totally uninvolved, but we have this head of the humerus entering into the shoulder blade that connects into the collarbone and then into the rib cage. And this relationship of arm into torso is what we can play with here. And we had a play already of shoulder blades coming forwards or backwards or up, or tipping a little bit forward or back. And every now and again, give yourself a moment of stillness to check in with how you sense these parts. And you might want to change your base of support in that moment. Find a moment of stability to then mobilize. What are the possibilities through the whole length of the arm, as well as all the joints, the wrist, the fingers, the elbow, possibilities through the shoulder. How can the arms cross the midline? In the moments of stillness, you may sense where the joints are hanging out, or you might have some sort of images or associations. See this as the kind of kinesthetic doorway to other kinds of association or image. And it might give you a very functional experience of your body, of strength or of flexibility or asymmetry, or it might give you some insight into your own expressivity here. Go ahead and keep adding in changes of base of support and moments of stillness to check out how you want to use this whole connection between palm and shoulder blade. Pushing into the floor, mobilizing into air. And if you haven't found yourself in the classic arm circle, give yourself a few of those. feel this gradated rotation through the small ball and socket joint. This rhythm between the bones. And then what that also might become, that has the underlying arm circle in it, but is not a full arm circle. Okay. So we've woken up skull to tail and heels to sitting bones in the relationship with the iliofemoral rhythm a bit. And now this upper body, palm, scapular, glenohumeral rhythm. So in your own way, playing with these different rhythms in your own body. Take another few moments to explore joining these different rhythms together in different ways for yourself. And occasionally inviting moments of stillness to check in with how you understand your parts and your whole in that moment, or how you sense them, how you experience them. And how this awareness can keep shifting maybe between different parts, zooming out to the whole, zooming into a part. And if you found something particular in any of the associations you were finding in the mobilizing of the arms, some character or some mood or some image, feel free to indulge in exploring in that in a little more detail. And keep recalling breath support as an ongoing dynamic process that realigns you from the inside. And how the environment you're in and the space you're in also shifts your alignment by virtue of how you might change so you don't hit yourself, or spaces that you can move into. This kind of inner outer experience of your dynamic alignment. And take one more minute for yourself, and then eventually find yourself in a heel rock, but no need to rush to get there. Take your time coming back into the floor if you mobilized your way out. And if you're down on the floor already, no need to kind of dive into heel rock. You can allow the thing that you're exploring to gradually fade. And no need to heel rock for too long either. When you find a heel rock, using it to connect to the whole of your body. Palms can be down again to connect this kind of closed kinetic chain of palm into earth. Noticing how you sense your body now. And then when you're ready, allowing heel rock to gently slow down, dissolve. And find a way to stand and to walk. Again, no rush. But often we think of alignment as maybe as a vertical standing phenomenon, or maybe sitting at a chair, at a desk, at the computer, when you know that maybe being in one position is going to give you a bit of pain later. So noticing yourself in walking. Awareness of all the parts. And these overlapping phrases of joining in, catching up, leading from. And let's gather for a quick conversation about that. Any questions you might have.